All right, guys, good afternoon. I'm currently recording this on Friday, April the 24th, and I have a little bit of news for you. Let's start with the good news. Good news. I'm combining this unit with the next unit to form the last unit. I'm hoping to have all of this done by Tuesday. I'll have it uploaded, and after that, I'll post the work. I'm not going to double the work at this two units. I'm going to keep the work the same as normal. And then that'll be it for my class for the remainder of the year. More good news, or bad news if you hate me. As of right now, I am slanted to have the Honors World History 2 next year. So you're stuck with me. Except for you, Ashlyn, you get to actually do something else. But the next two units are going to cover the High Middle Ages and the Late Middle Ages. So roughly Europe from 950 till about 1550, excluding the Protestant Reformation, because that's what we cover in World 2. So to start this off, and also, just going to warn you now, this is an extremely long unit, so I'm going to be talking for a long time. But going to start off with England. So England used to be a Roman province by the name of Britannica, and as all things do, Rome falls, Britannica breaks free, but they don't become truly independent because without Roman protection, these people known as the Anglo-Saxons, who we talked about earlier during the quarantine, the people that come from Denmark and parts of northern Germany, they move into Britannica. They compete with the local Celts. The Celts are just the local tribes of Britain, and the Anglo Saxons take over. And much like the rest of Europe, they form a feudal society. They love them some Jesus, and they do their own thing. But eventually, though, they do grow weak. And what's happening below England in France is that there are these people known as the Vikings that come from Scandinavia, and the Vikings typically will sail down the river that I can't pronounce, Seine, and they will raid Paris, and they will raid the lands along the river and along the coast, and eventually the Franks give them a plot of land up north and say, look, we can't fight you in a battle. You can't just outright conquer us. Here's some land. Stick to yourselves. Do your own thing. Stop bothering us. And the Vikings go, why not? And thus the Normans are formed. They live in the province now known as Normandy. It's now known for the D-Day landing. But the Normans do their own thing, and over time, they slowly become more and more French. And what eventually happens is the Duke of Normandy. Normandy doesn't have a king. The Duke of Normandy answers to the King of France, but the Duke of Normandy dies. And he leaves his kingdom not to his legitimate children, but to his bastard by the name of William. So at the age of 9, William of Normandy, or known by his enemies William the Bastard, because he's an illegitimate child, like Robert, his dad, literally had a baby with, like, the tanner's daughter. Also, if you don't know what a tanner is someone that works with animal hides. They make leather. But over time, William shows his political prowess by getting alliances and approval from not only the King of France, but also the local church. He also proves himself militarily. And the good thing for William is, being a high-born illegitimate child, is he has family in other royal courts. And in 1065 or 1066, the King of England, Edward the Confessor, he dies without legitimate children because he had a come to Jesus moment for some reason and swore a vow of chastity. Remember the definition of chastity being that, you can't get married or, have sex and all that. But Edward the Confessor dies, and there is a throne without a legitimate true-born heir, or any heir at all. There's not even an illegitimate one. And so England becomes the spot for a battle royale. You have three people who are claiming the throne in London. You have Harold Godwinson, who is an Anglo-Saxon noble. You have Harold Hardrada, who is the king of Norway, who has a really interesting life. If you're ever bored, look up Harold Hardrada's life. Like, he became like a mercenary. He joined the Emperor's Guard in Constantinople, all that fun stuff. His claim is through right of conquest, and then William of Normandy claims it through being distant cousins to Edward the Confessor. So what happens is Godwinson gathers up his army, and he's just waiting for someone to make the first move. Harold Hardrada lands in England. Hardrada meets the English under Godwinson at a bridge called Stamford Bridge, and they have a battle. In the ensuing chaos, not only is Harold Hardrada killed, but also all of his sons are. So Hardrada is killed, and it causes political strife across the sea into Norway. But upon hearing that Hardrada has landed in England, William takes his troops, sails them across the English Channel, and then lands and then marches on London. So Godwinson has to march his army back down in near the coast to meet William in battle at the Battle of Hastings. And although the Anglo-Saxons are very good warriors, the one tradition that they don't have is the Frankish tradition of heavy cavalry. William brings more cavalry than Godwinson does. He's able to outmaneuver, even though that the Anglo-Saxons position themselves to where they can't be flanked. We're not really sure what happens. Legend says that Harold Godwinson is shot in the eye, and then his army retreats after seeing the king is dead. But no matter what happens, William wins. He marches on London. He takes London, and in 1066 he is crowned King of England. He has to spend the next 22 years solidifying his claim. I think he dies in 1088. It's not important. But he spends the next 20 or so years solidifying his claims through conquest. And he's kind of a jerk. He puts down rebellions very violently. And one of the most important and influential things he does, other than just conquering England, is since he's new to the land, he commissions a census to take place. He gets a record of every landholder within his realm, and he records it in the Doomsday Book, Domesday. I was going to make a Doug Dimmadome joke, but I don't want to waste my time on this. And most of you probably aren't paying attention anyway. Most of you probably just click on this and then click off and just use Google. Work smarter, not harder. But the Normans are now in control of England, and being from France, the English nobility actually keep French customs. Up until the 14th century, even the 15th century even, English nobles considered themselves more French than English. They spoke French. They wore French clothing. They wanted French wines. They even spoke French. Like, Old English was only spoken by the peasants, not by the nobility. But eventually William dies, yada, yada, yada. And eventually we get to Henry II. So Henry II is the King of England, and he wants to expand the empire. Now, the English already still had control of Normandy. They don't lose control of that till the 1200s. But Henry wants to expand using Normandy as a base of operations. So what he does is he moves and invades northwest France. I always get my directions confused because I'm an idiot. But he moves into northwest France. It's a area now known as Brittany, Brittany. Also during this time, there are several crusades going on, and the leader of the French province of Aquitaine, which is above Spain, below Brittany, on the coast on the west side of France, goes on a crusade, and he has a wife named Eleanor. Well, Eleanor doesn't really like her husband, so she leaves him, and she marries Henry. Let me double check that so I don't look like an idiot. Sorry about that, was just double checking. Turns out Eleanor was actually married to the King of France and left him because he had very little clout, as you kids would say. She actually left him because even though they had children, there were they had no boys, so she needed like a male heir to actually secure her holding, because it was very odd back then for a woman to actually be in charge of a feudal kingdom. But Eleanor gets married to Henry and extends English control into France. And turns out the bad luck also continued with Henry II, because they only have... Hold on, I gotta double check again. I'm an idiot. Sorry about that again. I'm an idiot. I should probably do my research beforehand, but I just kind of winged these. Eleanor and Henry have a lot of children, and what happens is Henry, the young prince, is what he's called. He's not Henry III, he's never king. He actually dies before his father. So, upon Henry's death, the throne goes to his second eldest, Richard I. Or, if you're into the Crusades, it's Richard the Lionheart. He goes over and crusades, gets defeated by Saladin, goes back to England, gets shot by a crossbow in France, and I'm pretty sure they skinned the guy that shot him alive. Maybe they drew and quartered him. That's where like you tie each limb to a horse and then you smack the horse and then it rips you like in 4 pieces. But Richard leaves the kingdom to his son, King John. And there's only ever been one King John, because King John is kind of an idiot. So, although Henry II expanded the kingdom, and upon expanding the kingdom, he also created a new legal system, because he noticed that due to the feudal society, laws changed depending upon whose lands you were in. Therefore, crimes would have various penalties, which is not good for public orders. Henry II lays down the foundation for English common law, which is still used today, and the basis of a lot of European law codes, even part of our own law code, is based upon common law. So Henry II makes new laws. But John I isn't a very good ruler. He's kind of tyrannical. He wants more power than he can actually properly wield. And a group of English nobilities, known as the Barons, actually go to war with King John. It's the first Baron Rebellion. And the Barons actually defeat King John, and they make him concede on a lot of his powers by signing the Magna Carta. The Magna Carta is just a document signed in 1215 that weakens the King of England and grants more rights to the nobles, doesn't grant more wives to the nobles. I need to get more sleep. And yeah, it's just a document. John's successor, who I forget his name of, rescinds it, and pretty much every king after that slowly takes away powers from it. But the Magna Carta lays the basis for English parliamentarianism, which is the English Parliament of today. We'll learn more about the English Parliament, I'd say about September of next year, if we go to school on time. It's what we cover in World 2. So, let's fast forward to 1337. So, it's 1337. And in France, there's a king. And this king's name is Charles IV, also known as Charles the Bald. Imagine being a king, and the thing that you're named after is your trash hairline. But the last Capetian ruler of France, or the last Capet, the Capets are just like the ruling dynasty in France. I'll get to that in like 3 slides. He dies without a legitimate heir. And what this means is the Capetian dynasty is dead. Someone else has to take over. And what happens is the nobles in France want to put one of their own nobles on, but the King of England at the time, Edward III, claims the throne for himself, since he is a descendant of Charles through being like the grandson or the great-great-great-great-great-grandson of Eleanor of Aquitaine and Henry II. So pretty much you have 2 rulers who claim the right to rule France, and when 2 rulers have an argument, guess what they